don't tell anyone, but you're listening to the best kept business secret and his podcast, dedicated to helping you understand the successful business secrets that others don't want you to know, making no secret of success. Now, here's your host and quite possibly the best kept business secret anywhere, Mark Ford.
Hello again, and welcome to your best kept business secret with me, your host, Mark Ford, possibly your best kept business secret. How are you? Hope you're well. Sorry about the last episode of the podcast. Obviously, I now have a working Apple product. Thank you, Apple. It's now working. Which means that today we're going to find out the business lessons from the franchise that is Doctor Who, and specifically the Sixth Doctor, Colin Baker. So, here we are, 16th of March 1984, and Colin Baker sits bolt upright, stating, "Change, my dear, and not a moment too soon." Well, it was certainly change. 34 months of being the Doctor, with 18 of them being on hiatus, violence, media storms, very public arguments, and apologies and lessons in how not to do things. This was the Sixth Doctor, and this was how to wreck a franchise. Now, earlier, I spoke of how Gerald Ratner managed to wreck a business with one speech. It was painful, showed a lack of thought and a lack of respect to a customer base that had spent hard-earned money with him. Well, here we have the equivalent over a 34-month period that would wreck a franchise for a very long time and would take years and a generation to right the wrongs. The Sixth Doctor appeared in 3 seasons. His appearance in the first of these was at the end of the final episode of The Caves of Androzani, which featured the regeneration from Peter Davidson's Doctor. In a change to convention and a proven formula in that regeneration was not at the end of a season. It was the penultimate story of the season's run. The following week, he appeared in the final story of the season, but his first, The Twin Dilemma, and this is where the problem began. The Sixth Doctor's initial regeneration was unstable, and he nearly strangled his companion Perry before he came to his senses. In many scenes he appeared to be going mad, and his costume was utterly horrendous even for the 1980s. Add to that a story where guest actors were at best utterly wooden. This new Doctor left a taste in the mouth like drinking white wine vinegar. It may say white wine, but it's still vinegar. As far as launches go, this was the worst possible start, as it wasn't going to be until the beginning of January the following year that we'd see the character again. As fans and viewers of the show, we were left with a Doctor that has tried to kill his companion, was mentally unstable, quite unlikable, arrogant, and a bloody awful story to go out on. So our first lesson here is that whilst we deal with change well as a species, we can't deal with that much change that fast and that drastic. The introduction of such a contrasting personality had been the first episode of the next full series, and there was going to be some scope for a story arc to show why he was that way and see where that would lead. Instead, the public got was the reveal of something they thought they knew, but in fact was absolutely nothing like they remembered. It was a bad start. In business networking and marketing, you have roughly 7 seconds to make a good impression. There are different situations where making a first impression counts, but let's start with the most traditional. Meeting someone in person, whether it's in a client meeting or at a networking event. Now, you should always dress and groom appropriately. It's not quite like the fact that actually, if you get run over, you should always wear clean underpants. But this actually should go without saying, because people will judge you on your looks long before they judge your words or actions. And after all, it only takes a fraction of a second to start making snap judgments, and we do it all the time. You see, it's no problem for us to imagine that we understand why a person has taken a particular course of action or is the way they are. We actually don't really know. We make a guess based on our imagination, past experiences, or even wishful thinking. In all our perceptions, from our vision to hearing to the pictures we build of a person's character. Our unconscious mind starts from whatever objective data there is available to us, which is usually patchy and probably instant at best, and it helps to shape and construct the most complete picture we consciously perceive. Now, in order to offer us the most complete picture, our unconscious employs some clever tricks and, educated guesses to fill in some blanks. In our perception of people and their perceptions of us, the hidden, subliminal mind takes limited data and creates a picture that seems clear and real, but is actually built largely on unconscious interferences that are made, employing factors such as a person's body language, their voice, but not what they're actually saying, their clothing, their appearance, and their social category. Thus, you should start off on the right foot by dressing appropriately for an event, interview, or meeting. Now, this certainly wasn't good news for the new lead actor and the face of the franchise, which I'll come to later. While we all may wish there weren't expectations placed on our appearance in terms of professional events, the reality is that they are. Small things like hair and makeup can actually nudge people to see you in a more influential way. Wearing more casual attire rather than a suit and shiny shoes may make people perceive you as less professional. Smiling is shown to be a physiological signal of altruism, among other positive signs. When you smile at someone, it makes someone more likely to trust you, and it makes you seem more approachable. Flashing and smiling those first 7 seconds of a meeting with someone may be all it takes to forge a stronger first impression and connection. So can you imagine a face of a franchise, their first impression, absolutely looking angry and acting like they've had an utter breakdown resulting in violence against a female companion? Bloody hell. This was really going to take some coming back from. You see, first impressions count. Always have and always will. And to forget this rule is a tragic way to lose business and damage your brand. Now, to further this continuation with how things looked, this doctor's legacy could well be summed up by the utter mess he was expected to dress as. Mocked by many and hated by more, the character's sense of style completely went out the window. The actor himself, Colin Baker, wanted to dress his doctor in black velvet to reflect his character's darker personality, which, judging by the first episode, would probably have made a lot of sense. However, the franchise top dog, producer Jonathan Nathan Turner, however, opted for a deliberately totally tasteless costume with clashing colours. Designer Pat Godfrey made several attempts which were considered not tasteless enough before JNT finally accepted the last one as sufficiently garish. Colin Baker later described the outfit as an explosion in a rainbow factory, which at best is an understatement. The Sixth Doctor wears a red plaid frock coat with green patchwork and yellow and pink lapels over a white shirt with red question marks embroidered in the collar, a waistcoat and a large Victorian-style necktie, and yellow trousers with black stripes and a pair of green ankle boots with red spats. There were many variants of the waistcoat and tie, the earliest being the knitted brown waistcoat and turquoise polka dot tie. The waistcoat was later changed to red check, and in the following story a new red polka dot tie appeared. The future version of the Sixth Doctor, seen aboard the Hyperion 3 in Trial of the Time Lord, wore a striped waistcoat and a yellow tie speckled with black stars. Baker added a cat badge to the ensemble. All in all, it was bloody horrendous. Was this a reflection of the times? Barely. Was this the sign of who the Doctor was? Hardly. Was this a reflection of the real leader of the franchise? Maybe. There were many fans, critics and people who knew stuff that have said that the attire and image of this version of the character was just JNT putting himself in the role of the Doctor without ever actually appearing on screen. He was the flamboyant, PR-driven producer, and yet the character was a dark, brooding and unlikable version of himself, so the costume and the over-the-top dress sense just kind of never sat right. It would be like your mobile phone brand suddenly bringing out a new mobile phone shaped as a pig. Just plainly weird. Not wanted and not practical. It was yet another decision by the franchise leader that was just bewildering. But now it gets darker and even weirder as a power struggle began to develop that saw a show being pulled apart and messed about. Baker's first series had a top viewership of 8.9 million for the first episode of the series and a low of 6 million. In one way, you could look at it that he lost 2.9 million viewers, but the lows were actually halfway through the series, and by the end of its last episode, it was actually watched by 7.7 million. So they recovered to only lose 1.2. Statistics like this were difficult to quantify because of video recordings, etc. at the time, so it was likely that it could have been more. Now, the nature of its up and down script writing quality didn't help, as well as the fair weather viewers' acknowledgement of its poor effects thanks to the previous 5 years. Its tags of wobbly sets and rubber monsters were kind of hard to lose. And to that, the ramping up of the perceived violence in the show, well, this would start getting protesters like Mary Whitehouse asking for it to be banned or on after 9 p.m, the watershed time on TV. We also got a change to the format again. It moved from its midweek slots back to a Saturday tea time slot, which meant that it was to be aired 1 hour and 20 minutes earlier than it had been under Davison's Doctor, and then head of BBC One, Alan Hart, decreed that the episodes would be double the length they had been with the 5th Doctor. This meant there would be the halving of the number of episodes from 26 to 13. There were then cost implications because halving the episodes and doubling the time on screen of those episodes would also result in an extra 50 minutes of production needed for the series because of recaps and titles that were no longer being used to fill the runtime. So Hart was finally convinced to reduce the runtime down to 45 minutes instead of 50 minutes. Now, from a narrative point of view, unfortunately the writers didn't adapt and tried to follow what had worked with previous series. The first episode being the setup with the villain of the story being revealed at the end. Then all the adventure unfolds in the next episodes. Unfortunately, this structure is stretched out, so you end up having a 25-minute episode padded to 45 minutes. So when it comes to business lessons, changing for the sake of changing is never a good thing. And as you're listening to this, I bet somewhere at home you've got a favourite something. A jumper, a pair of slippers, seat on the sofa, or a set of pants. There is something just really pleasant about them always being there, and we just find it comforting. You see, the fact that the show had been playing the hokey-cokey on the schedule was unsettling for the team and its viewers. And as I said before, people like certainty. By changing it, they were now changing the structure of the end product. There had to be some give and take, and although on the face of it we were getting twice the show in one hit, we were getting less quality and value because the writers couldn't adapt. It had become watered down, and offering customers and clients something that is watered down, well, is a path to a worrying failure. You see, in some cases, you could argue that when companies do this, it's called shrinkflation, and this is actually a very real thing. See, every year products and services are looked at to see if products shrink in size, but its price doesn't. The Office for National Statistics, that's really easy for me to say, and I think I had trouble with this last time. The Office for National Statistics, there you go, got it out, ONS, studied the price of 17,000 items between September 2015 and June 2017. And it found 206 products in all categories had shrunk in size, while only 79 had increased. Among bread and cereals, the ONS found that 36 cases of shrinkflation. The next two categories with the largest number of shrinkflation cases were meat and confectionery. So things like your Jaffa cakes, Toblerone and Hobnob biscuits have all shrunk in size. But most categories also saw some products increase in size. There were 18 increases in size among the bread and cereal category, and 13 meat products where this happened. The category most likely to rise for the same price was tobacco, where there were also no examples of packet shrinking. See, shrinkflation is not a widespread problem, although products are much more likely to contract than expand. The ONS estimates that in 2016, just 1 to 2.1% of food products in its sample shrunk in size, while 0.3 to 0.7% got bigger. Over the last few years, consumers will have noticed that some companies have reduced the size of their products while the price remains the same, which is often attributed to operational and material cost rises. And in the past, companies blamed the rising price of raw materials. However, in the last couple of years, these prices have dropped back, but the shrinkage has continued. The ONS went on to investigate whether this was due to a fall in the pound, but said it hadn't spotted any trends that could be attributed to a Brexit factor. It may simply be that manufacturers have just found a way to boost their profits under the radar. The public aren't stupid. Messing your customers or clients around and expecting them to accept a substandard, watered down or stretched product or service just won't wash. You should always increase the value of a product or service so that your customers and your clients don't go away. Improve a formula, improve its life expectancy, add more freebies to it. Just try not to water it down. Now, power struggles behind the scenes spilled out once more onto the screen, and it was becoming a real thing under JNT's leadership. As script editor Eric Saywood, who was still a little bit peeved at the decision not to consult him about who was going to be the new Doctor, made sure that the scripts sidelined the Doctor and spent more time concentrating on scenarios and other characters than the Doctor himself. You could say, arguably, this was sabotage from within. Now, this was unfair on the lead actor, and as the face of the franchise, would always bear the brunt of any viewer backlash that was to be unleashed. A bad workman always blames his tools, but a good workman makes the best of the tools that he has, and in Baker's case, I think he did his best with what he was given. If Saywood had personal misgivings, he should have got over them. If he felt his position was untenable, he should have moved on. If there was a difference in vision and strategy, no matter how you look at it, Saywood worked for JNT and not the other way round. Now this is awkward, especially when you have two people in the business that think they know what's right and what's wrong. Someone, somewhere, is going to have to take a decision and take the lead. You have enough to deal with as a supervisor or boss at your workplace, but when someone's trying to sabotage you, it's time to drop a few things off the list and give the issue the attention it deserves. An employee who's trying to sabotage you or your company is a big problem that could result in reduced productivity, a damaged company reputation, or a spread of the virus that results in total mutiny. Minimise the damage by taking action now. Develop a workplace code of conduct and put it into your employee handbook. By clearly outlining the behaviours that are accepted and not accepted in the workplace, you have something to refer to when an employee gets out of line. Your code of conduct may include directions about what employees can and cannot reveal about the company in social media and other outside outlets, how they deal with the press, and how employees are expected to treat one another. Make all employees aware that you've created this code of conduct, or if you already have one, send one out as a reminder. Open up the lines of communication. If you have one employee who's trying to sabotage you, chances are they have some complaints, and they may not be the only one. Allow the employee to sound off about their complaints in a group setting, such as a regularly scheduled team meeting in which all staff are invited to make suggestions for improving the workplace. During these meetings, be very careful in your language and communication materials, taking steps to show workers that you want their voices to be heard. When you hear feedback, work on implementing the suggested changes and then report back about your progress in that next meeting. Document any instances of sabotage that you observe. If you already know the employee is trying to sabotage you, chances are it's because you've seen or heard about things that they're doing to bring you down. Write down the date, the time and the nature of the incidents and keep them in a very safe place where co-workers will not stumble upon them. In the event that the problem escalates and the employee tries to get you fired or tries to destroy the reputation of your business, you'll have evidence of their directed efforts against you, which may prove more vindictive than victim. Arrange a one-to-one meeting, no matter how painful that may be, with the employee to discuss the issues that they may be having. Sometimes simply talking about the issues may help you discover what it is about you that the employee doesn't like. This may involve developing an action plan for both of you and them to follow, so that you're both engaging in behaviours that are amenable to both parties. By remaining humble and listening to what they have to say, you may be able to come to some sort of compromise that has them feeling listened to and understood, while at the same time leaving you feeling more secure about the future. At the same time, remember that you're the boss. So remain the authority and don't let them dictate all the terms. After the meeting, document the content of that conversation. Now, if all else fails, talk with a human resources expert about the problem. If things are getting out of hand and you've made an attempt to solve the issue yourself, you need to get others involved. Simple. Your HR expert can help you monitor the situation and keep an eye out for bad behaviour. They can also provide direction about possible reassignment of duties for the person, or possibly even advise that you let that person go. So, moving through the Colin Baker years, once again, old foes returned. The Cybermen, the Master and the Daleks. It would seem that people were short on ideas and that going back to fan favourites seemed to be the best way to do things. But in amongst these typical formulaic retreads was a hidden gem in the form of a story that was a satire on the modern life in the 1980s, called Vengeance on Varos. To me, it was a commentary on how TV and life was changing, with people being executed on the vote of a watching public. And this was way before X Factor ever appeared. Cited by many critics as to how the franchise had become too violent for its ideal market, it was actually a parody of how TV had become a place for humiliation as entertainment. It was also a commentary on how there was a resurgence in the 1980s in people wanting to return to have capital punishment and the cane in schools so that people would toe the line in society. Another source of inspiration for this story was also the moral panic amongst certain sections of the public because of so-called video nasties, due to the rise of the affordable video machine. Strangely, these were the same people that were slamming the show, even though they had been trying to make a commentary about how right they were when it came to the video nasty materials. Things I advocate wholeheartedly is be authentic and have an opinion. The stories at this time were reflecting a changing time, rightly or wrongly. But through the medium of the franchise, it could be said that the wider organisation, the BBC, were showing their feelings to what was happening. Now, as a rule, the BBC is meant to stay impartial, so in theory, it can never say someone is right or wrong, but it can and still does reflect a certain amount of feeling towards that subject matter. Now, in business, this is not a crime. In fact, I think you should welcome it, because it will attract the right customers for you and your brand. If you're a business that has a very strong ecological mindset and is based around recycling of products, then when something comes to the attention of the public, you absolutely should have a say on it, because the public that you will engage with through these conversations are your ideal customers and clients. Think of the fair trade movement in coffee and cocoa. When certain places launched that they were part of it because they believed in it, customers followed them in their droves. But would it also interest you to know that some of those same businesses originally didn't have that opinion? Now, I strongly believe that the best ideas and the right opinions for a business to take arise out of group discussions and a group mentality with its staff or its customers. A single individual may have a great idea, but that idea will almost always be better and stronger when it's been debated, tested and fleshed out by a group of people. It then becomes the group's decision and the group's opinion, and will be all the stronger because everybody buys into it. But getting a group of employees or customers to come to unanimous agreement is not always easy. When people get together to talk over an issue, simple things will often take the meeting off the rails completely. I see it all the time in large and small businesses, from board meetings to mastermind group coaching. And if you still don't believe me, do jury service and see what happens there. So here, from my own experience, are tips at keeping discussions focused on outcomes and preventing egos from scuttling the meeting. So, number 1, before the meeting, make sure you invite the right people. Be inclusive and make sure to involve people who have an interest and an opinion on the outcome. Don't exclude people that you know that should be present. It's just so short-sighted. What you want is a meaningful discussion where input can be presented on a level playing field at the right time. And the best way to have a rich discussion is to tap into the right opinions and perspectives. Establish context and goals. And so, suppose you're building a house. You can't hold a meeting to discuss how many bathrooms the house should contain once the house is already being built. The time to have that meeting is when the house is still in the design stage. So if you organise a meeting, make sure the timing's right. Because when it comes to an opinion, don't announce it first, then have a meeting about it. Otherwise, it just may well end up being a foot-in-mouth moment. And you should also make it clear in advance what a meeting's goals are and what outcomes you are expecting. To use the house analogy again, if the meeting is about how many bathrooms the house should have, it should not end up in a discussion about which contractor to hire. Defining the topic and expected outcomes in advance would always help keep a meeting focused. So 2, now at the meeting, make sure participants are comfortable at giving their own opinions. Participants in the meeting should feel, they shouldn't feel intimidated and they shouldn't feel inhibited. They should feel that they can express themselves fully and they should make it clear that they are free to do so. Assume positive intent. If you've asked them to the meeting, assume they want to contribute to the discussion and not torpedo it. If you see participants digging in their heels or heating up emotionally, it's very important to have a few strategies in your back pocket to focus the talks. For example, you may be able to calm a frustrated participant by asking that person to help you understand their point of view. Or if one issue is causing tempers to flare, or you can ask that the discussion on that topic be paused and move on to something else for a while, as long as you do get back to that original topic. Number 3, listen. I know, bloody obvious, right? Well, it's really important to listen to what people say, and often that's hard to do. Something a participant says may give you a flash of insight, and all you can think of is just getting your idea. Keep yourself in check. Let the speaker finish and listen to what they are saying. Listening also means determining whether the meeting is moving towards an agreement or whether participants are all going off on a complete tangent. Number 4, keep an open mind. Don't hold a discussion to rubber stamp a decision that has already been made. You have to be open to new ideas and new ways of doing things, even if they upset your original thoughts. I want everybody to come to the meeting with an opinion, but that does not mean that I want them to leave with the same opinion. As American marketing specialist Guy Kawasaki has said, smart people change their minds. It's dumb people that don't. Now, at this point in time, the franchise really had started to lose its way and its key principles. To try something different, they even brought back the Sontarans, the Second Doctor, and his companion Jamie, with location shooting in Seville. It was a bloated, padded out story with stuff just shoehorned in, and the location wasn't even necessary to the plot. It was perhaps a stunt too many for some fans. But despite the worrying production issues, the first season of Colin Baker's Doctor actually finished with reasonably good ratings. The series finished with a story featuring the timeless Daleks, but changeless behind the scenes would mean more trouble for the franchise. The Sixth Doctor's era was to be marked by the decision of the BBC controller, Michael Grade, to put the series on an 18-month hiatus between seasons 22 and 23. Grade has been on record, even as he started the role, as saying he hated sci-fi, or in fact anything he didn't rate as quality TV or didn't have massive ratings. He cancelled the John Christopher's adaptation of The Tripods and even wanted to cancel the comedy Blackadder after its first season. Can you think of how that would now look? So Doctor Who was in his crosshairs. When it came to cuts in programming because of a financial crisis in the BBC and the anticipated cost of the launch of the seminal soap opera EastEnders with 104 episodes already ordered for its first year, the public and the press learned of the cancelling of the franchise. Grade had underestimated the backlash that would follow, with the press and fans having a full-on public outcry. He thought the public would have accepted this with little or no fuss because he believed that the public had grown tired of this long-running show. In his mind, it had had its day, and it was being overshadowed by flashy and glitzy American imports. To combat this, they tried to justify the decision with several reasons being given, and some that would contradict each other. The show was too violent. It had lost its appeal. The production team were no longer striving for excellence. The 45-minute episode experiment had failed, and a rethink was desperately needed. Well, the press and the public wouldn't let up, and this led to one of the most embarrassing and humiliating bits of memorabilia that would ever be developed. A record, or single as they were known then, called Doctor in Distress, was commissioned by someone to help bring back Doctor Who to our TVs whilst raising money for cancer relief. It was absolutely one of the worst records and songs of all time. Shocking. Just shocking. Z- celebrities and singers, and as good as an actress Doctor Who companion Nicola Bryant was, she simply can't hold a note in a bucket. It was horrible. Just horrible. Here, have a listen.
It was a cold, wet night in November, 22 years ago.
There was a police box in a junkyard. We didn't know where it would go.
An old man took two teachers into time and space.
It started all the legend that no other could replace. Doctor in distress. Let's all answer his SOS. Doctor in distress. Bring it back now, we won't take less.
Told you it was awful. Absolute shocking. But despite this unintentional event of trying to destroy the dignity of the franchise, Grade and BBC One controller Jonathan Powell was suitably persuaded by the backlash to reassure the public it would return after an 18-month hiatus. Your lesson for this is very, very, very simple. Listen to your customer base. In this scenario, the new head of the BBC just walked in and decided without consultation that the franchise should be killed off because it was not his cup of tea. He was wrong. Ford may not like selling the Ford KA and prefer it if I bought a Mustang, but the reality is that they realise that I can't afford nor have any need for a Mustang, so then I have the option of the Ford KA. If you're in a position of power, one of the most important things you can do at the start of and throughout your journey is to talk to and listen to your customers. They have the best ideas. They have the answers you are looking for. It made no sense to get rid of a show that still pulled in 7 million viewers on a Saturday tea time. What would you replace that product or service with? Don't just assume that they will then buy whatever you're offering as a replacement, as many will feel so quite undervalued. They will just simply go elsewhere. Don't risk it. Ask them what they want and whether there are better ways of doing things to get the same end result, which in this case was to reduce its financial commitments. You haven't always got the right answers. Sometimes opening yourself up to others' opinions is the biggest step towards finding them and getting even better ones that you dreamed of. The production team moved away from its previous plans for the show in favour of a season-long story arc which would link the different episode. Saywood came up with the idea of the Doctor being on trial more, in his own words, out of desperation rather than creativity. Art was about to reflect reality, as many thought that this was to be one last throw of the dice for Doctor Who. The format changed yet again, returning to a 25-minute runtime, but with only 14 episodes commissioned. A run that meant this was now a series cut in half compared to previous years. And yes, it upset the public again. The season took the format of 3 4-part stories set in the past, the present and the future, with the last 2 episodes destined to tie up the trial at the end. However, Robert Holmes, the writer of the last 2 episodes, died after a short illness, only completing one of the scripts of the last 2. Now in an unenviable position of having to complete the last episode himself, his relationship with JNT virtually broken down, and feeling guilty about his part in pushing the writer towards an early death, Eric Saywood quit with immediate effect, withdrawing the use of his script after what he considered silly and ill-advised feedback from the script that he had written. It was now an absolute mess, and things hung finely in the balance. At his wit's end, JNT summoned a husband and wife writing team to craft a suitable conclusion with only the previous script as guidance. He was not even allowed to advise of what had been in Saywood's script, as a lawyer was present at all times during this experience. So much had the JNT and Saywood relationship broken down. This was so that Saywood's intellectual property would not be infringed upon. Sets had been constructed and actors booked, so the team of Pip and Jane Baker had only 3 days in which to connect all these dots and write a script that was actually watchable. Now, the season was not the success that the public had wanted, but at least 14 more episodes of a British institution was available. It was notably more lightweight and calmer than the season that had preceded it, with a toning down of the violence, the increase in the humour and lightening of the colours. It was the work of a franchise under fire, and there was a sharp drop in ratings by about 2 million per episode, but it actually bought itself a pardon from Michael Grade. JNT was then given an ultimatum. As he picked up the phone to his personally chosen star and doctor, he had a choice between the franchise itself or backing the incumbent face of the same franchise. As Baker answered his phone, JNT said, "I've got some good news and some bad news." So, let's recap on the lessons from the short but very, very turbulent 6th Doctor reign. Number 1. Unlike a TV franchise, we have exactly 7 seconds in which to make a very good first impression. It almost doesn't matter what we say because of other people's experiences, prejudices and dispositions. We are wired to make assumptions about the other person or even business after 7 seconds. So what can you do to make those 7 seconds count? What can you do to your physical or property appearance to make the most positive impression? Number 2, don't water stuff down just because of the cost implications. Always try to add value wherever possible, as your public aren't stupid and they will always work out what's better value for them sooner rather than later. Number 3, if you see someone in the business sabotaging the business, do something about it. Don't let it linger. By ignoring it and putting your head in the sand, it will do more harm than good. Nip it in the bud and decide what to do going forward. Number 4, yes, have an opinion, but don't be afraid to change it. Your customers and clients have opinions, and they will be attracted to you and your business because of yours. If you run a larger business, take a census of what the opinion should be and work from that basis. You are not going to please everyone, but the last thing you want is to have a mass walkout of customers and staff because you publicly oppose everything that your company has ever stood for. Listen to what's really going on and be as educated as you can to be able to form an opinion, not just repeating your mate Dave from down the pub. Number 5, ask the customers. Out there right now is someone with the answer to the one thing that is holding your business back. Invite different opinions, thoughts and perspectives on a problem. Making a rash decision can come back to haunt you, and it may take some time to get people back through your doors or buying your services if to everyone else it was the wrong decision in the first place. And number 6, well, I've got some good news for you and I've got some bad news for you, but it's definitely a lesson that will be at the start of the next podcast. Right, that's it for this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Who'd have thought? All those business lessons from Doctor Number 6. I know. And if you're a Doctor Who fan, you're probably enjoying this. If you're not a Doctor Who fan, you're probably not enjoying it as much. But there you go. You're learning these lessons. It's a 55-year-old franchise, folks. Look, if you're enjoying the podcast, go to iTunes. Please give me a review. Tell me what you think. If you think it's crap, don't bother. Simple as that. But if you're really enjoying it, please go and give me a review. That would be superb. Look, if you want to get in touch, visit my website, which is www.markford.uk. That's www.markford.uk. Go and have a look at the show notes as well. You'll see loads of places to follow me and say hi to me. But until next time, go out, be brilliant, and go and implement some of these lovely lessons that you're learning from Doctor Who. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Shh, don't tell anyone. But you're listening to the best kept business secret and his podcast, dedicated to helping you understand the successful business secrets that others don't want you to know, making no secret of success.